Good day and welcome to the Leading with Nice interview series podcast. My name is Matthew Ewell and we want to help you inspire others, build loyalty, and get results. Now, today I'm super excited because we have somebody on who I think is just super cool because, and I'll tell you why. We're talking with Hanna Murray, who is an expert in birthing, labor, delivery, and postpartum. I'll tell you a bit more about her in a second. But obviously, I have 3 kids, and I thought I kind of had a good handle on what it's about to have a baby. And since I came across and discovered Hanna, I follow her on social. So when she's live, I'm get a notification and I'll watch. And the stuff I learn is so amazing. And, one of the things that we really value here at Leading with Nice is service. It's a core value. And what Hanna does is just it reeks full of service of just trying to be helpful. So tell you a bit about her. Again, Hanna is the labor, delivery, and postpartum nurse behind Babytalk. There's a website and social at babytalk.birthnurse and the blog babytalk.life. She shares really fun and educational posts on pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and breastfeeding. Just before we started recording, I was telling Hanna I learned all about hind milk and about double feeding on one breast if your baby's not getting enough milk. It's fab. The stuff I'm learning is amazing. And she's also the mother of 3 herself. She has a teenager, a toddler, a newborn, and I learned chickens and other pets as well. So it's a busy household. She believes in the importance of women being well prepared for their pregnancy and birth journeys. And she wants women to be empowered and knowledgeable when they come into the hospital for their delivery as a birth, as it is pivotal. It's a pivotal event in women's and babies' lives, and we couldn't agree more. Hanna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you're listening on audio, if you're seeing on video, you'll see, but Hanna right now is bouncing on a birthing ball and she has her newborn with her. So who is it? Can you introduce who this is?
This is Leah Jane, my 3rd baby and my only girl. I have 2 boys. Like you said, a 15-year-old, a 2-year-old, and then Leah Jane is my 3rd. She is my most challenging baby so far. I'm learning a lot, actually. You have these ideas in mind.
She's brand new too, right? She's a couple weeks old.
Yeah, she's a month old. And she's very, very fussy and needs a lot of attention. Of course, who thought that parenthood would be easy? I guess you have 3 kids, so you know that it's not. It's never easy. It's always a fun challenge.
Oh my gosh. I was a 3rd child, so I think actually I resemble a lot of the comments you're saying if you were to ask my mom as well.
Yeah.
But listen, obviously we invited you here because of your success in Babytalk and all you do to empower women to be their own advocates during pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum. And as you said, you just had a baby. So how are things going for you and your family as you adjust? Give me a broader picture. You mentioned that she's a bit more challenging, but what's it like having a baby, pandemic, all of that?
So it is different. I have to say, being a labor and delivery nurse and then being the quote unquote patient myself, it's very different because you have to put yourself in those shoes, and it's hard to go out of the labor and delivery postpartum nurse and become a patient. So that was a little bit challenging. But things are going really well. We are adjusting well. I'm lucky enough that my husband only works half days, so he's an extreme source of help at home. So it's not just me dealing with everything at home. And yeah, I'm happy that it's summertime, and luckily the pandemic didn't really affect us too much when we were, at the hospital. I had a pretty straightforward delivery. I actually had a C-section, and I only had to stay in the hospital for 24 hours. So everything went really, really well. And like I said before we started recording, the only challenge now is I have a much fussier baby than I've ever had before. And actually with my toddler, my 2-year-old, I was able to work on Babytalk a lot with him as a newborn because he was so easy. He would just eat and then sleep, but she needs way more attention. So that, I think, has been probably one of the bigger challenges keeping my business going, having to deal with all the other things called life, on the side.
Yeah. I can just see now, like, I remember, like, being the husband and father when my wife was pregnant with newborns and, like, just being like, "Oh my gosh, are you serious?" All the, like, unsolicited advice you get, so I can only imagine talking about this online. You'd have I'm sure you actually probably get it in your own comments on your social, like, everybody with their 2 cents on, what's right and wrong.
Yeah, well, I've been sharing in a lot of my stories how on Instagram how fussy she's been, and I actually don't mind the advice. It can be
Mm.
very helpful to hear what other
Oh,
people,
good.
because, and also you can hear what other people went through, and you know that it's not going to last forever,
Mm.
and you're going to have a time where it's going to be easier. So it's a great community, actually, Instagram and being online. It's not. I get a lot out of it too. It's not just my followers that are getting information from me. I actually get a lot back, lots of DMs with helpful comments and stuff like
Cool.
that. So, or tips of things to talk about, or
Okay.
ideas for
Alright.
content
Cool.
and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, speaking of your online following and your influence and how you launched it and grew it is really impressive. And obviously a lot of it comes out of your work as a nurse. But the thing is you don't go like high school nurse, like big on Instagram. So can you tell me a bit about your journey to becoming a nurse? And what I'm really mostly interested here is because I think people are going to hear your story and connect and be like, oh, that's me. And they'll be inspired in their own way. So I'd really
Right.
love to hear like what it is that drives your passion in this. Like, well,
Yes.
why? You can be passionate about a lot of things. Why is it this?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I'll start with saying that you really have to be passionate to want to take it this far, because if you're not passionate about the topic, you'll
Mm,
just kind of give up, because there has to be something behind it. So yeah, I didn't go into nursing right out of high school. I remember my mom, saying, what do you want to do when you graduate? Oh, maybe you should do nursing. And I was like, no way, there's no way I'm going into nursing. I hate blood. I hate needles. I thought that's all it was about, right? It was blood and needles. So I went into biochemistry. I finished my bachelor's, and then I started working. And then I realized, being in biochemistry, you have to kind of follow up with like a master's or a PhD. You have to have like be really passionate about like a certain topic to go far in biochemistry. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. So I knew I wanted to do something else. And it was actually funny. I was going to do computer science because I've always loved techie type stuff. So that kind of probably comes into the social media aspect of it. But I didn't end up, it was like basically a few weeks before I was supposed to start, someone mentioned to me, oh, why are you doing computers? You should go into nursing. And this wasn't even a close friend or anything. It was just a random person who kind of knew me a little bit. And she said, oh, you should go into nursing. And I was like, thought about it for a bit. And I said, well, you know what? I'm starting fresh. Why don't I just try it for a semester and see, if I like it? And I loved it. So I always owe this thanks to this random person who mentioned it to me. And labor and delivery, I think nursing, actually, after I had my first son, so that was maybe a couple of years before I went into nursing. I think it was always in the back of my mind. I realized what nurses actually do, and that was the first time I was in a hospital and I saw what nurses do. So I think that was probably the background of it. Why I went into nursing too is that I really just, I don't know, I just kind of was inspired by what nurses do in the
mm,
hospital. Um, yeah. So, and then labor and delivery also came as a fluke, because while I was in nursing school, I went to U of T in Toronto. I liked every single subject. I liked all the areas that I wanted to do
yeah.
anything. I was like, I just love nursing. But then it wasn't until I went into labor and delivery that I was like, this is my passion. I started off in a unit. It's in Sunnybrook in Toronto, and it was just such a great team. And I guess it just kind of like was a eye-opening moment. Oh, I actually love birth and postpartum, and this is what I want to do.
Mm,
Breastfeeding was always a passion of mine, just because I had issues with my first baby. Not really like
mm,
crazy issues, but like things that I needed to figure out. And I actually went online at the time. I had him in 2006, so there was much fewer resources. There wasn't even
right.
Facebook, right? So there were some websites and stuff. So I kind of found out then that you have to be your own advocate, that sometimes you're going to get bad information from doctors, you're going to get bad information from nurses and midwives, and you have to figure out kind of what works for you. And it's not always, cut and dry what's the right thing to do, especially with breastfeeding, but also with birth.
Mm,
So yeah, that's kind of a mishmash of reasons for why I went into it and how come I became so passionate.
I love that kind of. That's a great kind of big picture of like what put you on the path here, why you're here. So let's dive a little bit deeper.
Sure.
So, and this is, I remember I was doing a master's in leadership and management, and we were talking about like a way of seeing things with clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, yeah, like this is total makes sense. Like, don't you do this already? And I was with some really smart people in class, and they're like, no, man, like we don't see this that way normally. Like you do. That's what's really like that's what you're like you have that ability. That's special for you. And I was like, oh, that's a thing. Okay, like that kind of so that's what put me on my path
Right.
towards thinking about leading with nice and how do we
Yeah.
advocate for clarity and helping people tell their stories and building better teams. So I'm
Right.
just curious for you, like in your journey, like when you were starting Babytalk, you had this great idea and this drive. Clearly, you had a love for it. Um, was there a moment that it was like an aha moment or like a realization that like, okay, I need to be this advocate for advocacy, which is amazing. It's very meta, right? Very
Yes.
Inception, like you're
Yes.
an advocate for advocacy.
Right.
But was there a moment or was there like a series of events? You kind of touched on a little bit, but can you take me down to a very specific thing if there was one?
Yeah, and it's not easy to talk about at all. And I don't think it's
Okay.
something a lot of people know about until they're in the system, birthing in the hospital system. Um,
Mm,
Hospitals are businesses, right?
mm,
Whether I know that in Canada everything's covered, we don't pay, but really it is still a business. Doctors, they work for fee for service, so they want to get as many patients in and out as they can because that's how they make their money, and that's totally fair. But I think I had a couple of, it's not just one moment, but a couple of times where I just saw women not treated as well as they could have been in birth. And again, I think it's a systems problem. I never blamed one specific doctor, one specific nurse, or anything like that, but it's just a systems problem of overworked healthcare professionals and a system that is not in favor of women. So I realized, hey,
mm,
if we can somehow, advocate for women and help them understand what actually happens in the hospital so that they can advocate for themselves and be like, ask for things that should happen and ask for things not to happen too, because a lot of it is time sensitive and it's a rush. I mean, you probably remember from having your kids. um, so that was
mhm,
one piece of it. The other piece of it was also that one of the favorite parts of my job as a labor and delivery nurse is teaching. So just sitting down with the patient and, telling them, going step by step by step. And they're like, wow, I never knew this. My doctor never told me this. Like, for example, someone having an induction, they'll come in. I always have a spiel, because they're not in labor at that point. I'll have a spiel, go step by step what's going to happen, what's it going to look like. And they're like, thank you so much, I'm so happy that you actually walked me through this. I feel so much more prepared. So then I thought, aha, let's go and like prepare a bunch of women at once. I can do this spiel once, and maybe 1,000 women can see it rather than just the one, and they can feel more prepared and more happy. And eventually the reason for this is I really think that giving birth, like I said in that like you said in the intro about me, is that it's a pivotal event, right? So if you go into parenthood feeling kind of
mm.
traumatized or feeling like you went through some terrible thing, I think it affects your parenting, at least in the beginning, and it definitely affects your postpartum, like depression, anxiety, all those things. So I really think
Mm.
it's an important thing to try to be as well prepared for birth as possible so that you come out of it feeling, like you rule the world and now you can rule this thing called parenting.
This is not. I'm going to go off topic, off script. If you listen to this podcast regularly, I'm quite transparent. I share the questions in advance with the guest because I don't want there to be a surprise. I want everybody to be well. I want these podcasts to be useful so everybody's prepared. And so one thing that you probably don't know, but it's not a secret. Hannah is actually the sister of one of Lead with Nice's employees, and I thank her every episode because she does so much great work. And Naomi is Hannah's sister, and that's how I came to know Hannah in the first place. I wasn't randomly searching for like birthing Instagram accounts to follow. And when Naomi told me about her sister, that's what turned me on to following hers. And I'm hearing something that the two of you share, and uh, it is this strong desire to be of service.
Hmm.
And because Naomi, like, man, she's my executive assistant, and she'll ask me like, is this what you're hoping I'm doing? Am I being effective? I'm like, Naomi, like, I showed up today. Like, I had totally forgotten about all this. Like, without you, I wouldn't even be here. And just the stuff she does for the business. And I'm hearing this same ethos from you. So is there something, maybe a shared experience that might have influenced this, both of you, or is this just happenstance or DNA? Do you think there's something that this is what I'm asking. If I'm a human being with kids now, is there something that you experience that I should help my kids experience to get this service generosity ethos, or is it just happenstance? You don't have to have an answer. Don't worry.
I don't know. I wonder. Like, I've never actually thought about that before. And so it might be hard for me to come up with a response right on the spot. And if I ever think of something better, then I'll let you know. But I don't know if Naomi ever told you, but our grandmother, she's a survivor. Well, she's passed away now, but she was a survivor in the Holocaust. So and she came out of that experience wanting to talk about it and teach about the Holocaust. And she that was always her, like, probably every time I saw her, she would talk about how, it's important to teach and, let the history kind of go on. So that's the first thing that came to mind, that, both of us, we were very close with her. So that is probably part of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about your grandmother. She sounds amazing. There is a great clip of her on the CBC from a couple years ago. I remember watching it. I'm going to find it. I'll put it in the description. So if you're listening to this or watching, feel free to pause this, go watch that clip to get an idea of who this woman was and how. I would actually say that's probably very accurate as to why you're built the way you are, because of that influence. I love it. That's so. Quick take. If you're listening to this, one thing you can do right now: teach people about the stuff you care about. Just talk about it. Be open with it. Frequently do it. That's a great takeaway. I love it. I love it. Okay.
Sure.
Back to the questions, though. Thank you so much for letting me go off topic.
No problem. No
so I want to go back to like the beginning of Babytalk, and you have this great idea. You have this drive. You have the passion. You have the experience. And now you have to do it. Now, I know from running my own business, there are times you put in the time and you're like, oh, hooray, one like, one follow. Oh, and it was my mom, okay. So like, what were some of the challenges of getting things off the ground, and how did you persevere? And I want to hear about your resilience and about like what it looked like in those moments.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to have the answer that you like, but let's go for it anyways.
Okay.
I started Babytalk as a blog. That was my my focus in the beginning was just to make a blog. So I got into that first, and I really enjoyed it, writing and all that. Same thing with blogging as like social, as you get no comments, you get no likes, you don't even know if anyone's reading your thing. So to me, I made both the blog and the social. It was almost like a game for me. It was like, how far can I take this? Like, what do I need to do? What hacks do I need to figure out so that I can kind of take it a step further? And so with the blog, it was Pinterest. I just like happened upon, and I don't like buying courses and stuff. I don't know. I'm kind of like, I guess I'm cheap like that. I've gotten better since I started, because I know that can be very beneficial. But I read a lot of blogs. I just like tried to figure out from here and there, how to hack Pinterest. So I did, and the blog, like, I wouldn't say took off, but it actually got views and it got traction, and it's still getting traction. And I actually got my numbers yesterday, and now Google is giving me way more views because I kind of stuck to it and I persevered. So that was really good. And people told me in a few years, Google will pick up and people will read it, they'll find it through Google, and you won't need Pinterest anymore. And then I think what really helped me with the social was community. So I kind of hooked up with a few other labor and delivery nurses that are on like blogging and social. And I followed what they were doing. We talked a lot. We kind of like, I wouldn't say help each other out, but, we had this, kind of group of people that we were like, we'd share each other's stuff. And I find that for me anyways, on Instagram, in my niche, it's all about kind of community. So not just finding other labor and delivery nurses. I found other people in the same area in birthing. So like doulas, midwives, any baby type accounts, and we would do like takeovers from each other and that kind of stuff.
Mm,
Challenges for, keeping going for sure are just distractions. So work, like I actually work as a labor and delivery nurse, and I have a
right.
family. And so it's like finding the time. For me, I just have to do it whenever I have a moment. So I might work on a post, while I'm watching my 2-year-old play outside, and then pause it for a little bit. And then when he's napping, I might write the caption, and then at night I will start a blog post. I kind of have to just like divvy up my time. But that's the biggest challenge, is just not having that good chunk of time to just sit down and like really focus on it. I started the blog before I had the 2 babies. I just had my teenager, and he was way easier to, he just go do his thing, and I could work as much
Yeah,
as I
yeah, yeah.
wanted. So that is definitely super challenging, especially right now with her. But I also have to just give myself grace and be like, okay, so you're not going to be as present for, a month or 2. That's fine. You can get back into it once you have a better, handle on things at home. Like I have to enjoy my life as well, and I can't just be, stressing about getting
Yes.
everything done all at once. I find with Instagram, I kind of like that as my go-to platform. I am on Facebook too, and I did start kind of TikTok and stuff. There's always new things to get into, just to get the more views and more people to come to you so you can, teach more. But I find that Instagram has like kind of everything in it, like, and I especially like the stories, because it's something you can always just go on. I can like say, hey, I just thought of something I really want to teach you guys or talk to you guys about, and then I do that, and it only takes 10-15 minutes, and it's done. And so then my posts might not, I might not have as many posts as I'd like, but it is what it is. You pick and choose, right?
Yeah, I'm going to if you check out on Leading with Nice or on our YouTube channel, there's a video I did on our New Year's resolutions worth it. And you just described my approach to New Year's resolutions. There's a bunch of different ways I do it, but one of the rules I have for myself is I only try to achieve 80%.
Right,
Because like you just said, it's okay if I'm not as present for a couple of months. Yeah, 100% it's okay. And you don't have to have a baby for it to be okay. Like you can
yeah,
be tired, you can be wanting to break, you can be any number of reasons that it's okay. You can come back to it. We live in this world sometimes where it feels like it's all or nothing.
right,
And I love that approach, Hannah, that you just said, like, it's okay. Also, like, you can have a bad day and it doesn't make you a bad parent,
right,
right? It
right,
just, that
exactly,
day was bad. And,
exactly,
one thing I learned from actually sports is with officials, referees, you can criticize the call, but it's not about criticizing the person. So you can say that strike is bad. That was a bad call. But if you say you're a bad umpire, usually you'll get, thrown into the game in more trouble. And you're basically saying, like, I can be busy, but that doesn't make me a bad blogger, right?
yeah,
It just makes you busy. I love that. That's a great message. If there's one thing you take away from this, well, actually, you know what? You're gonna take away a lot more things. There's so much good stuff in this. I'm learning. I was like, now we've just, people who are regular listeners, we've just started recording videos. So in the past, I would often catch myself. I'd be taking notes and I'd forget that I'm actually the one doing the interview. So I'd be
yeah.
like, "Oh, hey, tell me more." And I'd be like, "Well, you have to." So I'm more conscious now of I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this and take notes for
Yeah, but those
myself.
are the best podcasts, though. I love listening to podcasts, and those are the best ones where there's just as much, like you're learning just as much from the interviewer as the interviewee, and vice
Yes.
versa, right?
Well, you're not supposed to say this probably, but like I do this podcast just for me, like
Right.
we do get listens and downloads, but honestly, like I love it. I learn so much and
Yeah.
it's one of the best things. So, all right,
Right.
well, listen, let me, one last question then. For people who are just starting out online with a website or social media, maybe they have is an idea and a passion, but they don't exactly know how to execute a plan. And what I'm wanting to do here is I love leaving people with practical tips. And there's going to be people that are listening today that have heard your story and be like, oh man, that's my story, but it's not nursing and postpartum and childbirth. It's like, it's model trains
Right.
or it's, advocacy for mental health issues.
Mhm.
So I'd love for you to kind of take your learning around what you do, regardless of the topic, and share that. So like, what would you say to them? What what can you do to keep yourself motivated? I mean, we touched on it a little bit, but maybe a few, like maybe 3 quick tips on what they can do to keep themselves motivated and keep going the same way you do with Baby Talk.
Well, I think firstly, it has to be a passion that makes you kind of automatically motivated. You know what I mean? It's not like just go into something. I kind of like what do you mentioned, model trains or chess or whatever. Like if you love chess and you just want to share everything about chess, there's endless content that you can make around that. It's just a question of how much you know are passionate about it. So like I think that's the first thing is find something that you really 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 love, because that will drive you, that will push you to do more. Because for me, sometimes I lie in bed in the morning or at night and I like a piece of content comes up in my mind because I'm like, I just really need people to know this. Like I need them to know it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So and the thing is, like we haven't talked about this, but like I would love for this to be like my side job. Like oh, there we go. Like I would like to make money. That's one of my goals with Baby Talk, and I do make a little bit, like ads and stuff like that. But that can't be your like number one goal, I don't think, when you're starting out, at least, because if it's just the money factor, I think you'll end up being pushing, being like a walking advertisement, right? So it has to be a topic that you can just talk about without thinking, am I going to make money from this? So it's a hard balance. I hope that's what you're looking for, a kind of answer.
No, of course. Listen, whatever you had to say was what I was looking for. So listen,
Okay.
we're gonna end this off now because I'm gonna become third fiddle in this conversation very soon.
Yes.
Where can people find out? Where can they find your stuff? Hit us up with your website, your social handles, etc.
Yeah, so the blog is www.babytalk.life. And I have lots of blogs on there about, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, breastfeeding, like all the topics really. And then so online, I'm mostly on Instagram and my handle is babytalk.birthnurse. And you can find me on my stories a lot, but I do post informational posts about all those topics that I mentioned on my blog as well.
And it's really cool. I'm not sure how much you've done lately, but I loved you use Lego to tell to teach a lot, like
Yeah,
Lego pieces.
So actually that's part of maybe I can add that to the last question. Was the other thing is, when you do start online, it's good to have something that's like on a social media platform, have something that's kind of uniform. And that took me the longest really with Instagram, is to find something that I can do that makes the feed look kind of uniform and nice, but it's not too like complicated. And for me, it was Lego. A lot of people use like drawings or they take pictures of themselves, but something that's kind of you can use over and over again. And Lego really worked for that.
Yeah, I love the pregnant Lego figures. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Listen, Hannah, thank you so much for making time. I learned so much. I enjoyed it. I also appreciate your daughter being on as well. She was wonderful. She added her commentary at the end.
She was,
but listen, I will tell you, right? This happened though for a lot of people, and I want to say thank you to them. First, Cindy Craig, who you would have dealt with. She does all the booking, all the communications. She gets us together. Naomi helps me with the whole business, but in this particular, she helps with the questions and sourcing guests. Jamie Hunter, if you are hearing about this for the first time, he's our content manager. He made all the posts, got it on the blog, got the podcast uploaded. Austin Pomeroy is our audio editor, technical producer. He makes it sound great. Carrie Cotton is our account manager. And while I'm doing these podcasts, she's busy taking care of clients. And you know what? It struck me today that I really should be thanking my wife, Allison Ewell, the mother of my 3 kids, that I get to do a lot of this great stuff. And Allison is a great leader in our house of taking care of our children and helping me be a great dad. So thank you to her as well. Awesome. Hannah, have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much for having me. Enjoy your day.
Okay. All right. And you can find this and a whole lot more on leadingwithnice.com.